All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show. Clear signs of schisms within the Liberal Party. Now, at the UN on Tuesday, Canada voted in favor of a non-binding resolution that calls for, quote, an immediate humanitarian ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. It was a move that broke with years of Canadian foreign policy. It shocked Jewish groups. We have seen since that vote people be vocal. Even members of the Liberal Party say they don't agree with their government's decision. Today in the corridors of the House of Commons, reporters are out looking for answers. They spoke to Anthony Housefather. You're going to hear his audio in a second, but let me welcome David Heurtel onto the program. Hi, David. How you doing?
Doing well, Elias.
I'll let you listen to it again. I know you've heard this already, but let our listeners hear. Anthony Housefather asked questions by the press gallery on the last 24 hours. Have a listen.
I was very disappointed in the vote at the United Nations. I don't think it was consistent with the statement we issued yesterday that imposed conditions on what would it take for a ceasefire to happen. And to me, if Hamas does not lay down its arms, there is no ceasefire. That is just unacceptable that Israel is placed in a position when Hamas broke the ceasefire on October the 6th and broke the temporary ceasefire last week. One at a time, I will answer everybody.
Can you still be a liberal?
I mean, I'm not going to get into things that are, a liberal, my convictions since I've been a teenager have generally been with the Liberal Party. I'm disappointed in this vote, and let's stick to the substantive stuff about the vote.
The government's position is that they voted in favor of the motion, but put sort of a statement out in order to explain what they
The motion is the motion. The motion was an unconditional call for a ceasefire. I do not support an unconditional call for a ceasefire. I don't believe the majority of my constituents support an unconditional call for a ceasefire. And it's my obligation as an individually elected MP to speak out when I think that Canada has abandoned its traditional position at the UN of support of Israel at a time when Israel's at war.
So, David, listen, Anthony Housefather is a guy that already, right, when he went against his government on the Anglophone front on various language issues and the Official Languages Act, any further steps back and he falls out of the backbenches and into the, into the mezzanine. So what say you, David?
Well, kudos for Anthony Housefather for doing what he believes in. And, like he said, he feels he's representing his constituents by expressing this opinion. So you got to respect that. He's going to get a lot of backing from voters in Mount Royal. We're seeing this trend. I mean, he did it once. There were some consequences. He lost the chairmanship of a parliamentary committee. But aside from that, I think we're seeing more and more M&As. We saw it on the provincial side, Elias, where for the first time we heard, I think, 3 CAQ M&As coming out publicly against the LA Kings $7 million gift that the government announced through Éric Girard a few weeks ago. So I think I don't see Justin Trudeau expelling him from caucus. You can still be a liberal and disagree with some government decisions, but these are 2 big ones. I mean, at one point, for an M&A, you're going to have to start asking yourself a lot of major questions. I mean, when you're talking about issues like bilingualism and the Canada support of the Jewish state, when yourself you are Jewish and you're representing a riding with a large Jewish community like Mount Royal, you're going to have to ask yourself questions. What does it mean to be a liberal?
So, and I have to point this out. It is not just Anthony Housefather. Marco Mendicino, like a 5-part Twitter post about how he disagrees with the decision. I need to ask you this, David. How big of a problem is it? Because you must be hearing what I'm hearing of the internal divide and schism within Justin Trudeau's Liberals. How big of a problem does Justin Trudeau have on his hands right now?
Well, he has a big problem because he's weak politically. Right now, when your government is riding at about 26, 28% in the polls, and you have a lot of M&As who are thinking about running again and feeling that their jobs are in jeopardy, obviously they're going to be looking very closely at every position because it's going to be very tight. Marco Mendicino, let's face it, objectively speaking, he's disgruntled, right? I mean, he was a cabinet minister and he's been demoted. So he may have some personal animus there that he wants to get rid of. But I don't know anything about that. You're still right in the idea that there is a divided caucus here because the only way the Trudeau Liberals can even think about keeping government in 2025 is by getting that left progressive vote that is usually associated with the NDP.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about that vote is usually more pro-Palestinian.
So I want to play some more audio here, David, which ties into what you're saying here. So again, a lot of chaos in the corridors of the House of Commons. This is Melanie Joly, Foreign Affairs Minister. She gets surrounded by the press gallery, and they ask her a bunch of questions. Here's one. This is a reporter with the Globe and Mail. This is Marika Walsh, who asks the question that everyone is thinking, but maybe not asking. She asks it. Have a listen.
Live side by side in peace and security.
Is the only reason why you're calling for a ceasefire because you're losing Muslim support and donors in Canada? What is the change on the ground in Israel that changes your government's position so dramatically from a week ago?
I've just answered that question because I think the fact that the humanitarian pause happened was important.
So she did not answer the question and then moved it along, right? So, David, again, this goes to what's happening right now in Canadian politics for a party that needs to get its ducks in a row for the next election. Your thoughts?
Well, what a missed opportunity. Again, Melanie Joly and Justin Trudeau with the cassette. Of course, everybody's for peace, and everybody's for a secure Israel and Israel's right to exist. Almost everybody is for that, and everybody wants a war to end. But here's a missed opportunity. Look at what the U.S. has done with the same set of circumstances. And this is complex geopolitics, but I think it can be done, and it can be explained in Canada. The fact is that the U.S., even Joe Biden, and this is the big story right now, this morning in the New York Times and the U.S. media about the Israeli-Hamas conflict, is the fact that now Biden seems to be saying very clearly to Netanyahu, you're losing world support. You can't go on like this with this massive, indiscriminate bombing of Gaza and think you're going to keep world support. And also there is more and more information. We know this, Elias. The New York Times has been reporting this. Others in Israel have been reporting this. Netanyahu knew that Hamas was preparing this a year ago. Also, Netanyahu knew that Qatar was financing Hamas. He knew about this. And so he's in single digits right now in Israel. And the prolonged fighting is his last opportunity to cling to power. And also his right-wing government doesn't want a two-state solution because already even the U.S. is saying, hold on, we have to think about after. So there's a difference between saying, and the Israeli general position, which is saying, we cannot continue with Hamas being next door. That's one thing. But the other thing is you have to think about, okay, how do you get rid of Hamas without killing everybody in Gaza, one. And two, you have to think about what comes after. And even Joe Biden, the U.S., which was one of the 10 countries voting against the resolution, is saying, hold on, we have to rethink this now. Yes, there was one way to prosecute the war right after October 7th, or the counterterrorism action of after October 7th, but now we're in another phase. And so there's a difference between going after Hamas and also the fact that you need to distance yourself from Netanyahu. And Biden has chosen a way of doing it, saying we still back Israel, but Bibi, you have to think the way about the way you're doing things. and the Trudeau way, which is creating this type of disarray.
Look where we are now. Both sides now really don't want a two-state solution either. So this is where we've ended up. All right, David Heurtel stuck around so that we can talk about the Big O, my favorite subject ever. And of course, David used to run the Olympic installation board in a previous life. So, David, let's talk about it. Here's the latest news for everyone just tuning in. The Olympic Stadium will be indefinitely closed. They're beginning the work to assess what has to happen with the roof and the technical ring. The playing surface will be unavailable because of that work. So one impact, a CF Montreal game will be moved. Auto show's got to go. That's about it because nothing else really happens at the stadium. And now they're saying, listen, we're looking at $1 billion. David, here's the question. To what end? Let's say we spend the $1 billion and we get the Olympics, and it's not going to be $1 billion, it's going to be more, but let's say it's $1 billion, and we get the Olympic Stadium to its best possible current version of itself. At the end of that process, to what end? For 2-3 impact, the CF Montreal game, 2 Alouettes game, for that, David, to what end? That's my question.
Well, just so we have all the facts, Elias, it's La Presse estimates, has sources. We're up now at $750 million. All the Olympic Park has announced is that there has to be some preliminary work, but that money, that $750, which is not confirmed by the government yet, still hasn't been authorized by the government. That's very important because in the current context, imagine if the province went crazy for $7 million for the LA Kings, imagine $750 million for the Olympic Stadium. So there's a big, difficult political play here ahead for François Legault. He commented today there should be a decision maybe in January. What is clear is that something needs to be done. Now, what? That's the question. Now, I agree with you. There is no economic case that justifies $750 or $1 billion for a retrofit of the Olympic Stadium. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Now, the only reason to want to do this is because it's a big contract, and it's again about probably ego. There's no rational justification here. Am I a fan of the Olympic Stadium? Yes. Should the Olympic Stadium stay? Yes, because again, status quo is not an option, and demolition is not an option. So you have to. Then it becomes the question of what do you do with it right now. But can you justify? Will there be any types of revenues that in any type of foreseeable future will pay for this type of investment? The answer is clearly no.
So, David, just on that, as we wrap up the show for today, on it can't be demolished, okay? And no. I've said this to you, like I'm talking about the bowl. I'm not talking about the tower. Just the bowl, I think, needs to be demolished. I've had conversations, David, with Controlled Demolition Inc. They hold all the North American records for demolitions, and they've told me, yeah, of course we can demolish it. Every place can be demolished. They demolished the Georgia Dome above a subway line in Atlanta. It can. When you say it can't be done, political will can't, or
no? Well, there's
physically
two things.
can't.
And of course, anything can be demolished, Elias. It's about cost and time,
yeah.
And that's where you and I have a differing opinion. I think it's going to take hundreds of millions of dollars in 5 years. Your people say different.
Yeah.
Fine, but I'm not going to get into an engineering debate with you here.
Yeah.
But the thing is that then we go into where I think in principle you and I again disagree. Is that now keeping the actual bowl, keeping the actual stadium itself, then it becomes also a question of heritage, of architectural and historical pride. Like it or not, the Olympic Stadium is a symbol of Montreal. And outside of Montreal and outside of Quebec, it's not a negative symbol. and again, I know I'm always opening myself up for a lot of criticism when I say this, but it is our Eiffel Tower. It is, and it's funny because the histories are quite similar in terms of the Eiffel Tower. At the beginning, it had very, very negative
Bad
press.
reviews. That's right.
But
That's right.
the idea here is that it is a symbol, and so destroying it, I think, would be a horrible mistake.
That's why I split the difference, David. This is why I split the difference. Here's my grand compromise. Tower stays, bowl goes. David, you've got to go. We'll catch up real soon. And, of course, you're all over the calendar on CJAD over the holidays. We'll talk again real soon.
All right. Take care.